And we're pulling out the LaCroix as it is 12:30, and we have a very special guest on. Jarom Jordan joins us from BYU TV, a senior sports producer. Jarom, thanks so much for coming on. Man, I'm sorry we had to do it, but we're going to have to take an offensive coordinator away from you.
Hey, it's all good. We expected this after an 11-1 season, and what a year it was for BYU. Likely finishing in the top 10 of the AP poll. BYU's kind of returned to glory after just 18 wins the last 3 years. So no, all good. Jeff Grimes is a great dude. Very excited that he can kind of go back home a little bit. He's from 2 hours away in Garland.
Yeah.
Obviously went to UTEP. Has ties all over the place, but Jeff Grimes is awesome. He's a great dude. He has a great mustache. He has a great grit about him and an innovative mind.
So, Jarom, when you look at a guy like Jeff Grimes and his progression at BYU, what he's done the last few seasons, has he grown into the role of offensive coordinator? This was his first time to have that position, or has he been consistent throughout?
Yeah, he came with like 25 years of experience at a really high level, obviously highlighted by winning the national title at Auburn, and of course his time at LSU and Virginia Tech and Colorado, and before that BYU, when the Cougars had a nice run of 10-plus win seasons and top 25 seasons in kind of 06, 07, 8. Yeah, he grew into this first OC job, getting paid a little more pressure, right, to be the OC. And in 2018, he had a senior quarterback in Tanner Mangum who kind of struggled through the first couple of games. BYU did win at number 6 Wisconsin, but ended up going 3-3, mixed it up. Zach Wilson starts at quarterback in Game 7, and the rest is history. 2019, BYU kind of struggled out of the gate at 2-4, and then had a more collaborative offensive coordinator situation with Aaron Roderick and Jeff Grimes and some of the other coaches. And so Jeff has he's done a nice job at blending talents with guys on his staff to become a good OC. The jet sweep was certainly a part of that. So expect that to potentially be in the mix at Baylor there. He did a good job of not only that, but BYU's offensive line produced a first-team All-American this year, left tackle Brady Christensen, BYU's first since 2001. So I would say his greatest strength is offensive line, his ability to recruit well. Obviously a former LSU guy at Baylor now, right?
Yeah.
Maybe Jeff Grimes knew a couple weeks ago. I don't know. But that's big time. So Jeff's a good dude. He's got a good mind. He's been around the game for a long time. And he's waited a long time to be an OC. And now after 3 years at BYU, he's going to take a step up, not only in pay, but in status with a Power 5 program like Baylor that's hopefully on the rise.
So BYU, a private religious school, Baylor, very similar. And what comes with that most of the time is a great sense of community. And you get that here, as I'm sure you're plenty used to at BYU. Is he a guy that fits that? Is he the big bear hug kind of guy that comes at bear hug, pun intended,
nice,
comes in and really just wraps a community, a program, fans, and media around him, and is open to being that big smiling guy on the front of things?
He's more business driven, but he's down to earth. Like, he'll hear you, but he is definitely like on the pursuit of greatness. And if the cost is potentially, not maybe hanging out with you, that's it. I would say he's somewhere in the middle. He's not like gonna be texting every media member,
right?
But he's also not the gruff, upset Nick Saban type, right? Which Nick, when he wants to be happy, is happy, right? But when it's halftime and he can't hear in the headphones, he's not very happy. So he's somewhere in the middle, but he has some fun. Like, his offensive staff has had mustaches with him in fall camp before.
Wow.
And he's kept it. But yeah, he's got a little family. I believe he has 4 kids, maybe 5, and one that's kind of a junior in high school or so. So it's a younger family, has a couple adopted kids as well. So he's a good family guy. I think he'll fit in there in Waco. And obviously, again, he's going home to some degree, right? He has a lot of Texas ties, Garland and UTEP, like I mentioned. So I think this is a natural progression. And this is something we expected. We expected to lose Jeff Grimes. Kind of game 8 or 9, we thought, hey, he's going to get a job. And he's not a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints here. So it made sense that sometimes those people want to stick around and be at BYU because of the environment and the religious tie. And Jeff came back to BYU. He loves BYU, but yeah, second stint worked out really well. He's going to elevate. He's going to help his family a ton, and he's going to get a pay raise and a bigger opportunity in the Big 12, which would be pretty cool. And by the way, we're stoked about Steve Sarkisian at Texas, by the way, because former BYU Cougar player. So we're very excited about that.
We're also stoked about Steve Sarkisian at Texas because he's yet to win more than 8 or 9 games in a football season, and we're hoping that maybe that becomes a trend at UT as well. But obviously you got to wish a lot of luck to a guy that's been a standout in college football and worked his way back up through the Nick Saban offensive rehabilitation program. And you wish him the best, but it's an opposing program that Baylor fans rub elbows with a little bit. But on the Jeff Grimes track and his offense this past season, you look at the statistics. He's number 3 in scoring offense in the country at 44 points per game. He's number 1 in the nation in yards per play at almost 8. And then total offense for Baylor last year, 24 points per game, 310 yards per game. That's 9th out of 10 teams in the Big 12. How revolutionary is Jeff Grimes going to be? Is he a win-now guy that's going to implement his system right away?
Yeah, he'll definitely implement it right away. Whether it'll be successful right away, it may take a minute. It depends on the personnel.
Yeah.
And obviously this is interesting because BYU and Baylor play this year.
Yeah.
October, 16th, was it?
Yeah, that's, yep.
At McLean Stadium. Very excited about that. On the river there, that's going to be awesome. Always wanted to see Baylor, so we'll see how that works out. But it may take a sec. So in 2018, BYU kind of struggled offensively. A lot of that had to do with starting a freshman quarterback the second half of the year. That was Zach Wilson, who had graduated early, was true freshman, like no time really to figure it out. But you see what happened in year 3. Now, part of BYU's success this year is that Zach Wilson is going to be a top 10 pick, and he was incredible. Part of that is having an offensive line that was senior heavy for the 5, including a left tackle who was a first-team All-American. And then part of that was BYU's schedule. It got blown up. They had 6 Power 5s on it originally. All those teams canceled with BYU. So the Cougars weren't able to get as strong of a schedule per se, but it lended itself to an 11-1 year. And BYU was blowing out everybody but UTSA. That was a 1-score game. And then obviously at Coastal comes down to the last yard.
Yeah.
But BYU blows out Boise State on the road. BYU had never won at Boise. So it took a sec. And once there were guys that had been in the system now in year 3 and had played a bunch, then it really clicked. Now, if BYU plays all those Power 5 teams in this season, I still think BYU is a 9-win team, which against that many Power 5s, I would have said is a good season. Perhaps 10, and maybe, in the 20s in the rankings. Now BYU is going to finish top 10. But all those things combine to be something special. But it may take a moment. And obviously in the Big 12, it's a shootout literally every week. Defense optional, right? Sometimes you just got to put up 40, right, to compete if you ever want to touch the likes of, Oklahoma and whatnot.
Well, I tell you, the Big 12, you never really know. It's maybe the most bipolar conference in football. Sometimes you win with 12 points. Other times it takes 72. And it varies by week. So you got to have a coach that can adjust to that. And that is one of the questions that I think most Baylor fans will pose. We're moving from an offense that didn't want to make adjustments to personnel as much as others might. Is Jeff Grimes a guy who's going to have his scheme, but also mold around the players he's given year 1?
Yeah, I think he gets it. It being the adaptability you're referring to, that you have to see who you have and what you can do this year with those people. BYU was able to get grad transfers a couple of times and made an impact. And then there were guys on the team that even switched positions. So BYU had a 1,000-yard rusher this year that played linebacker last year for a spell.
Wow.
So perhaps he even looks at that and says, oh, this guy can do this at this level. And Jeff is back in the situation where BYU has good athletes, but when Jeff was at LSU and Auburn, obviously the type of athlete is different than what BYU gets. BYU develops its players in an amazing way. Had a 1,000-yard receiver this year in Dax Milne, who declared for the draft early, who was a walk-on 2 years ago. And then Tyler Algier was a 1,000-yard rusher, and he was a walk-on a year ago.
Yeah.
So Zach Wilson was Boise State verbal commit, and BYU fires Ty Detmer, speaking of Texas ties. The only Heisman winner, BYU fires him. Can you imagine Robert Griffin III being the OC and then getting fired from Baylor? That'd be weird, right?
Yeah.
But guess what happened? All of a sudden, the quarterback BYU had, who was actually Ty Detmer's nephew, committed. That goes out the window. Jeff Grimes and Kalani Sitake go after Zach Wilson, and now they got a first-round guy 3 years later. So his ability to identify talent is really good. He's going to produce NFL offensive linemen. And if you have good quarterback play with a great O-line, I think that's better than great quarterback play with a good O-line.
Absolutely. And what he'll have at Baylor, and also I love how you said a linebacker converted to a 1,000-yard rusher. So you hear that, Baylor fans? Linebacker Jalen Petrie is starting at quarterback next year. Jarom Petrie is a guy that had 2 pick six 2 straight weeks and was the majority of Baylor's offense this season at linebacker. But Grimes is a guy that was number 1 on Baylor's list for offensive coordinators. And we at SicEm365 have a premium chat room, premium forum where folks can go and give their takes and ask their questions for the experts and the not so experts alike. And one of the things that was thrown around the last couple weeks is, who, as an offensive coordinator, does Baylor want? A play caller or a developer? And where does Jeff Grimes fall if you have to split him between those two categories?
So, full disclosure, Jeff Grimes has not called the plays at BYU for the last 19 games. He's been the run game coordinator who would consult, and he would run things during the week. But on game day, starting last year against Boise State when BYU was 2-4, BYU mixed it up, and Aaron Roderick called the plays. So Jeff Grimes is totally in the mix and capable because he won at Wisconsin in 2018 as the play caller when Wisconsin was number 6. He knows how to do it, and he's good at it. But BYU mixed it up, and they found better collaboration in that way. And so that's a little different workflow than maybe people know or understand sometimes, that the OC isn't always necessarily the play caller. I imagine he'd be the play caller at Baylor. That was something that happened here because BYU was 2-4, playing number 15 Boise State, and mixed it up, and it worked, and they've stayed with it. But what would happen was Jeff Grimes would when there'd be a running situation, he would be consulted on what play do you want, and he would suggest a run play, and they would run that run play. So at LSU, Jeff Grimes did this as well. So it's not like Jeff Grimes comes in cold as a play caller. He did it for a year and a half. But the last year and a half, he's been more of the run game coordinator, O-line coach. So when you talk about development, he's going to develop guys. He developed several NFL offensive linemen his first time around at BYU in 06-08. And then this time around, he's going to produce multiple offensive linemen as well, including at least 1 pick in Brady Christensen. I mentioned that. First-team All-American left tackle. And he does a good job with the quarterbacks as well. Obviously, the leadership that he had helped with Zach Wilson. Zach credits Jeff Grimes and others with his development. And so you can certainly see that. But when you talk about, hey, he's been calling the plays for BYU, it was actually Aaron Roderick the last 19 games. But I don't think that takes away from what this offense was able to do in large part due to his leadership as the offensive coordinator.
And I think a big part of that for Baylor fans that's going to ease your mind is it seems like we're coming from a regime where there was a lot of sturdy experience that called plays that didn't waver a ton and almost have play calling by committee, it sounds like. And what you have at Baylor is a lot of returning staff, oddly enough. You bring in a new OC and you still retain 2 or 3 guys there that know Baylor, know the players you have, Sean Bell being one of those guys at quarterback coach that can give input. So knowing that Grimes isn't hey, my foot is put down, this is my play, I'm calling it Houston Nutt, and Auburn, Gus Malzahn at Arkansas. Instead, there is going to be a lot of collaboration. I think that's a good sign. Now, one of the things that plays into from a development standpoint, like you said, and how good of a developer he is, Baylor is going to have a quarterback battle. You have 4 guys in the room right now, and maybe 2 that have separation from the others, but there's a lot of questions around that. How is he? I know offensive line you talked about. He's the offensive line whisperer. Can he whisper to quarterbacks too?
I think he can. And certainly he can't be the OC and Zach Wilson have the season and be completely uninvolved with Jeff this season and the last 2 before this. He identified Zach as a guy he wanted. This was a kid that was a little undervalued. If Zach Wilson plays in Southern California in high school, he's probably at a Pac-12 school. Yeah. But he ends up at BYU, a guy that hated BYU growing up. So you talk about someone convincing someone to do something that will help them elevate. That's a good example and anecdote, I think, for that. So, yeah, I think he can identify a good quarterback. And his time at Auburn, obviously, he's the O-line coach for Cam Newton, who had an incredible Heisman Trophy winning year. So he's been around greatness. And at LSU, they had some good quarterbacks, but mostly they relied on the running backs for a couple of years. But I think he's been in the biz so long that now's the time for him. He just helped produce a top 10 offense. He's getting a Power 5 offensive coordinator gig at Baylor. This is the time for him, and he's a guy that puts in the work, extremely prepared, innovative, thinks out of the box, loves trick plays, by the way.
Whoa.
Like BYU ran a lot of those 2018 and 2019. I don't know if you saw the bowl game, Boca Raton. BYU had a reverse pass to a tight end for a touchdown. BYU did this a lot. Where it wasn't Boise State level, but I mean, at least once a game, you're mixing in something to throw off the defense. And BYU didn't do it as much once Aaron Roderick took over the actual play calling, but jet sweep was a staple of the offense. That's a thing he got from LSU. And obviously the Dave Aranda connection. Dave worked with Jeff a ton at LSU and loved him. So here we go. It's the LSU boys trying to make it happen in Waco. And by the way, BYU's going to have a quarterback battle as well. And one of the leader in the clubhouse probably is the senior named Baylor Romney. So that could be fun.
Baylor Romney, that last name sounds familiar. Could his dad be a politician?
It's like a second cousin, uncle, something.
But somewhere down the line.
Yeah, it's around there somewhere, but it's not like a clean just uncle. But Baylor's brother Gunner was a guy who was pacing for 1,000 yards before he got hurt as well. So we may have a brother to brother thing going.
Wow. Well, let me give you this, Jarom. I have never known you to lie to me. So I love
conversations.
Yes, I love the analysis you've been able to give for us on Jeff Grimes and what he's going to be able to do, hopefully at Baylor. But I know people are excited. You know, we came out of a situation for an offensive coordinator for one season, and not a lot of people were very excited about the performance this last year. Dave Aranda shows that he's going to put his foot down and have a win now mentality in making this move, and it looks like on paper, it's going to pay off. So let's close this out here. We do a thing on this show called Bear Games, where we have a string of questions to ask our guests at the very end of their call or our callers. And here's the thing, Jarom. You're not going to know the answer to most of these, but that almost makes this more fun for me. So what we've got is a Baylor second best bracket where RG3 is excluded. We take the best 10 players or best 32 players of the last decade and try to nail down who was the second best. So we've got All-American running back Treston Ebner or 400-pound tight end Laquan McGowan. Who you going with?
I remember Laquan.
Yeah.
I remember Laquan, dude. How can you forget a 400-pound tight end? Yes, I'm going with Laquan. I know that's like a 14 over a 3 kind of thing here, but let's do it.
It is tied. Believe it or not, it is the head basketball coach, Scott Drew at Baylor, also picked Laquan McGowan. So maybe you're on to something here, Jarom. We've got Tevin Reese, a wide receiver. You can't get a 50-piece unless you're throwing a Tevin Reese. Or linebacker Bryce Hager.
I go Bryce Hager all the way. Just what a career from Bryce.
You've got running back Lake Seastrunk and linebacker Eddie Lackey. Now, Lake is spelled Lache, and his last name's Seastrunk. He's all name team. So if that helps your voting.
Yeah. You convinced me. All name team. Yeah.
All name team Lake Seastrunk. And then last question, the final on our Bear Games. When you dip a chip into hot cheese, Jarom, what do you call it? Cheese dip or queso?
Oh, that's a good question.
It is.
I'm too far north. Call it cheese dip. But I should call it queso. My mom's from Mexico, so I should call it queso.
Jarom, that's the second call in a row that said cheese dip, and I'm a cheese dip guy. I feel outnumbered, but we're crawling back in slowly but surely. Jarom, thanks so much for your call. That's Jarom Jordan from BYU TV. A pleasure to have you on talking Jeff Grimes today.
Great. We appreciate it. Have fun with Jeff. He's awesome. And we look forward to October 16th.
Hey, look, a big O on me at George's when you guys come down to Waco. You'll get it when you get here.
Awesome. Can't wait.
Sweet. Thanks so much again, Jarom. I'm Drake Toll. Armstrong Sims is running the mothership. This is Up Tempo, and we'll be right back after this break on